All right, good morning, folks. Thank you for coming to this 9 a.m. session. I know it's the last day, but hopefully you guys are excited to learn about all the new products and features we're bringing to data loss prevention. My name is Alex Lee. I am not Moss, and I'm not Denise. There's been a small session change, but I am a senior program lead in the DLP space, and I'm really excited to be talking to you guys about DLP today. So you may ask, for your organizations, why DLP? What does it help with? Why do your customers need it? Well, here's a lot of data points we have on here. The main thing to talk about is with our Office 365 data loss prevention solution, we will help protect your customers from data leaks. And we all know that as our world changes and we are no longer protected in the system where everything is protected within firewalls, your customers and your end users are bringing mobile devices, everything is now cloud. We need even more protection than previously before. Some of the data here is, we did some surveys and we know that about 41% of employees bring mobile phones and apps into their companies, so how do we protect those devices, right? We also know that there's about 50% growth in the volume of data year over year. And from our data sources, we know about 58% of end users have accidentally leaked sensitive information, either by accident, by auto-completing to the incorrect email address. These are all common things we hear about. In addition to that, more and more enterprise companies are moving to the cloud. The data shows that about 85% of enterprise organizations now keep their data on the cloud. And finally, about 88% of organizations are unable to prevent their data loss. So it's a very, very important topic today. And we know it's an industry of about $997 billion. So that's a big deal. Now, what I'm going to focus on today is, inside of the Office 365 platform, there are many pieces around security and compliance. Today, I'm strictly focusing on the middle one around information protection. And there's three main areas of focus. The first one is intelligence and insights. Gone are the days where an admin usually goes in and knows everything about the system and configure things. We're trying to bring you guys insights in order to lower the cost of ownership on both the admin side and also the end user side, which brings me to number 2. And finally, the last piece is we fully understand, not all of your data may be hosted and contained within Office 365. That means we need to help you and protect your customers beyond the scope of Office 365. So we're going to talk about how to do that today. So moving on, one other point I do want to make and cover here is, as you see, Microsoft's information protection solutions not only encompass just Office 365 products now. We've heard the feedback that Microsoft solutions need to extend beyond that. So we're partnering with ISVs and to expand the scope of our protection technologies. And you can see all the different touch points we have here on this slide. Right now, in this particular session, I'm specifically going to focus on the Office 365 DLP sections and also Office applications. I'm going to be demoing and showing you how to protect and how to configure your policies as an admin, and also see the effect of what that looks like as an end user. Just one more data point for you guys. So in our Office 365 DLP product, we're seeing that our customers are adopting data loss prevention in huge increases. So over the last year, we've seen a 6-time increase. So that's 600% in the number of customers that we're seeing now using Office 365 DLP. The second piece is we're seeing more and more users being protected by DLP. And we see a 7.5, that's 750% increase, and that's huge. And that just shows that a lot of companies are seeing data loss prevention and Office 365 DLP, as a very important piece to roll out in their products. Next thing we're going to talk about is who we build DLP for and where we focus. So there are 3 main personas that we target for our Microsoft Office 365 DLP solution. The first one is, of course, the IT admins. I'm going to be showing you what it looks like to configure a DLP policy within our system and how we've done a lot of work to reduce the cost of maintaining those solutions. The second persona we really target is the compliance and security officer. So what I'm really excited to be showing you guys is our third and final demo is actually going to be walking through our smart reports and showing you guys the new investments we've done in reporting and monitoring. And we're really excited to show you guys that. You may have seen it in some other sessions. We're going to go deep dive into how exactly we can look at how to investigate and remediate some DLP policy violations. And the last persona we often talk about is the end user and the information workers. Now, a lot of companies are really worried about security, but what does that mean for the productivity of end users? You know, end users oftentimes don't think about whether they have to protect their content or, you know, what protection actions to enforce on it. With our Microsoft Office 365 DLP solution, we make that a lot easier and more intuitive for the end users. We have the ability to show end user warnings called policy tips that come in line as the end users working on their sensitive content. And I'll be demoing that. The next thing I want to kind of just hit upon, which we've already talked about, is our Office 365 IP and information protection DLP solution. It really hits upon the point of being able to empower and educate the end users. And it also works off a lot of different insights. You know, we're actually shipping and have shipped something called default policies. We hear the feedback that, you know, a lot of admins don't want the complexity of being able to go in and configure their policies and then being protected. So what we've also done there is enable default policies. So even without going in and enabling a DLP configuration, your customer and your tenant and your organization and even the end users will be protected by our default policies for the common sensitive types that we often see. And last but not least, we've also have a lot of sophisticated built-in protection. What that means is I'm going to be demoing a lot of the mainline, mainstream, and how we're making the policy configuration and end user experience more streamlined. However, we're also hearing the feedback that more and more customers need the customization and the fine-tuning of these out-of-box pieces that we ship. And so what we've done is also enabled custom classifications and additional fine-tuning to make sure that our DLP product is configurable and customizable for every single one of your organization's compliance and security requirements. So moving on, I'm going to do a quick demo of the end user. And I'll be stopping after demos for any questions. I do have some swag, so if you guys want to come up to the mics, we can answer questions. So how many of you guys in your organizations have started using SharePoint? Okay, so everyone's on SharePoint, it seems like. That's awesome. Now, what happens when your end users put sensitive documents on SharePoint? Are they aware that they're putting these sensitive documents on SharePoint? Are they protected? Well, here is what I'm going to be demoing. So what I've done here is I'm Denise. I've gone in as an end user, and I've uploaded a whole bunch of documents to my SharePoint site collection. I'm actually going to go ahead, and I'm working with an external partner, so I want to share this out. I've clicked Northwind Customer Data, and I'm going to click the Share button. Since I'm working with an external user, I'm going to select specific people. And I'm going to type in a Gmail account. So if you take a look here, as I typed in my Gmail account, instantaneously, I get a warning here that says, this item that I'm working on contains sensitive information. It can't be shared at alex@gmail.com. And if you also notice here, we're providing inline real-time protection, and the send button is actually going to be grayed out. So what this means is a lot of end users may not know about the compliance and security policies within their organization's system. What we've done here is we made this so streamlined and so easy for the end users that it's all natively integrated into the flows and their sharing flows. So I can also click if I want to know more about this policy tip. So you may ask, what happens if I'm an end user and I don't want to send my admin this email that says, hey, I need access, this is a person I'm using and talking to as a vendor. Well, what's configurable within our policies is the ability to say I can override the policy if I need to, so the end user can continue with their workflow and still be productive. And of course, there is going to be an incident report and a notification that's sent to your admin to say, like, you have a policy in place, but your end user has overwritten the policy so they can continue with their workflow. In addition to that, you can see we're also very smart about the way that we notify the end users. We also tell them what exactly is inside of this content that has triggered the company's policies. So in this case here, my document has credit card numbers, which is why it's been deemed sensitive. And later on, I'll show you some configuration about how you can fine-tune this. The text around the policy tip details is, of course, customizable. So if you choose to say some other text around, this is labeled as highly confidential or whatever else, that is all configurable. And I'll show you that in the second demo. So the other piece I did want to talk about is, great, we're protected in SharePoint, but what does that mean for email? Do I get the same protection email? Yes, and I'll show you exactly how that works. So I'm going to do the same scenario here, and I'm going to add a Gmail account. I'm going to go ahead and attach a document. And as the document's loading, instantaneously, I also see the same policy tip behavior. And I can also click on this Learn More to be able to see exactly a similar messaging around, hey, this document has credit card numbers. I can report a false positive. If I configure the policy to be so, I can also provide an override. And there's also a setting within our policies that allows you for the end user to put in a business justification as necessary. So it can be audited and later looked at by the admins or the security compliance officer as need be. One other thing to point out here is what happens, let's say, if you upload 10 documents, right? How do you determine which one is sensitive? Well, we've also thought about that to make the end user experience a lot more streamlined and intuitive. We have an icon here that shows you specifically which document that you've uploaded or attached that has that sensitive content. And of course, it works the same if I type in the sensitive content in the message body. So I'm going to stop here for any questions. You want to come to the mic?
What about an offline scenario in Outlook?
Oh, okay. Great question. What about an offline scenario in Outlook? We also support that. So starting in Outlook 2013 and plus, beyond, we also support the same policy tip behavior. So that means if I'm uploading, attaching, sending the email inside of Outlook 2013 and beyond, I get the same policy tip experience. In addition to that, for the email case, let's say you're using a non-enlightened client, right? Or let's say you're using a client that just doesn't have the policy tips set up or for whatever reason, right? What will happen is our policies will also evaluate through the transport pipeline, so everything will be caught on the service in Office 365. The end users may not get a nice streamlined inline policy tip as they're working on their content, but it will always be protected within the system. You want to, one more. Yep.
Are the tips displayed in local language?
Okay, so the question was, are the tips displayed in local language? The answer is, of course. So what that means is if my OA is configured in Chinese, Japanese, the supported languages within Microsoft, then these tips will also be shown up there. In addition to that, you can also, inside of your configuration, specify which language you want to show.
We could be doing DLP with the exchange portion, the compliance under EAC, right? And we heard that if we enable DLP on security and compliance, mail tips for OWA will stop working. Is that true?
So the question was if labels can be used with DLP. Is that correct?
Kind of. So we are doing DLP under Exchange and the EAC, but on the compliance center. Now we are implementing DLP for SharePoint and OneDrive on the security center, right?
Yep.
So we're going to have policies for, let's say, credit card on both places, right? I heard that if we do it, because we are not doing the exchange portion on security and compliance, the mail tips for OWA will stop working.
So, got it. So you're basically trying to, in your system, migrate the rules that you have in Exchange that were configured in EAC to our new Security Compliance Center.
We are not going to migrate it because...
But you want to use both.
Yeah.
So inside of our new Security and Compliance Center, which I'll actually demo in a little bit, we also have the ability to enable Exchange rules. So the same rules you have in ETRs, you can also configure them inside of the Security Compliance Center. And also, if you configure them in both places, I will double check offline, but I believe they should be supported in both. As long as you configure just the Exchange ones in EAC and the SharePoint and OneDrive ones in SCC. But we can talk offline about that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yep. 2 more questions before I move on. Yes.
In the SharePoint, you can open the files with Explorer and then map that link as a drive map. And then you can attach items to your email from the map drive option. In that case, still you get this message.
Okay, got it. So the question is around attaching links inside of mail, inside of the actual document. So today how that works is we won't do the protection of links inside of email. However, if your document and content is already uploaded to SharePoint, the protection already happens in SharePoint, like I showed before. So
it's not about links. You can open the files in Explorer and then copy that URL and then map as a drive. And then that SharePoint data will be showed as a drive later on your left pane on the Windows Explorer.
Okay. Well, maybe, yeah.
So basically what you're asking is the mapping of a drive.
Correct. And then you attaching.
You copy the file in email.
Correct.
Yeah. So that is policy tips and
Yeah. Then it would be, yeah, exactly what I showed here. Instead of, this attachment, it would just trigger off of that too.
Okay. Thank you.
Last question before I move on.
Yeah, what file types are covered and how many?
What file types? That's a great question. So we support all the Microsoft file types. In addition to that, some of it depends on the iFilters within your system. We can take it offline. There's actually documentation we have online that talks about all the different file types we support.
Okay, so if there's a zip file and it's got every Microsoft file type in it, but one of them is problematic, do you just get the red icon that says is zip files a problem?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that question.
You're flagging up here that which item is the problematic item and which has been triggered as being, DLP sensitive. If it's a zip file with, 20 different files in it, I assume just the zip file gets...
Okay, let's take that one offline because there's a complicated answer for that one around... we can configure Exchange rules for that, but I'll take that one offline maybe after this. Because I do want to move on because we have 2 more demos I do want to get to. All right, so moving on to this. So just to quickly summarize, I talked a little bit about the demos around balancing end user and productivity and risk. I didn't go through all the different clients that we support today, but you can kind of see here, I showed the SharePoint piece. There's also, we support the the OneDrive mobile app in both iOS and Android. In addition to that, we talked about OA, we talked about Outlook, and we also support policy tips in Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. So now let's talk a little bit about how we do this, right? How are we able to show end users these policy tips? Well, we really have 4 main pillars. It's centered around detect, classify, protect, and monitor. Detect really involves around being able to find and scan the data in your organization based off the policies defined by your admin. Do you want to scan data in SharePoint, Exchange, OneDrive, etc.? Classify really is around once that data is found and detected, being able to determine if it is sensitive. Different organizations have different levels of sensitivity and different definitions. And I'm going to show you in the next demo exactly how you can specify which sensitive types to look for. I also talk about how exactly that's configured and how we do it in the back end. The next piece around protect is we support a lot of different actions within our DLP policies, and they range from restrictiveness. You saw the end user policy tips, and you saw the ability to block sharing. We also have the ability to encrypt, and also being able to, do other kinds of protection within your policies. And I will show that through the policy configuration. And the last one is being able to monitor. And this is really helping the compliance and security admins and the auditors figure out what exactly is going on in our system. How do we audit, report, and alert? And my final and last demo I'll be showing is specifically around how we have enhanced reports and alerting for those pieces. So to talk about detect and classify, I wanted to hit upon 3 main points that kind of differentiate our product. The first is we are built in, not bolt on. What that means is we are able to detect and classify your content within words stored inside of Office 365. It's natively integrated into Exchange, SharePoint, and also OneDrive for Business. The second piece is our easy-to-use common sensitive types. So today we have 80+ out-of-box sensitive types that we've shipped. They range in different geolocations. We have Japanese sensitive types, Taiwanese ones. We also have a ton of medical sensitive types. And this really helps reduce the cost of ownership for the admins. You know, gone are the days where you have to go in and customize your credit card numbers or your social security numbers. And the last piece I want to talk about is that we've heard a lot of feedback by the fact that, you know, our out-of-box sensitive types are very great and very strong, but what if you need to customize and configure some to meet the specific requirements of your organization? Well, we also allow you to do that. We are also working on some UX to be able to fine-tune and customize your sensitive types. I know that's a huge ask we heard from a lot of you guys, and just want to let you know and talk through that we are working on it, and I'll be showing a quick screenshot of that later. Just to hit upon some new pieces, you know, I talked already about how the fact that we now support custom sensitive types inside of Office 365. If you want to take a closer look at that, there was a session on Wednesday by Wes Hawley that goes deep into how to customize your different sensitive types. Another piece here is we've added something called the HIPAA template, and this is an ask we've heard a lot over the years. Like, since we've shipped our product, we've heard a lot of additional asks around enhancing our HIPAA templates. And what we've done there is we've added large dictionary support, so you can create a huge list of keywords and be able to use that for your HIPAA policies. And the last one, but not the only one, is you know, we're also enabling grouping, binary operators, and unique matches. That's something we've also heard quite often. The other piece that is not there yet, but I'm happy to say is coming and we are actively working on, is exact data match. And that's something we heard a lot from you guys, and we're hearing your feedback and taking it. Now, speaking specifically to deep content analysis, so you may ask, you know, how do we determine whether something is a credit card or a social security number? So when I was at the booth today, a lot of you guys had come up to me and said, you know, I'm deploying a DLP policy, but things aren't matching. Why is that? I'm putting in, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as, you know, some sensitive information type numbers. You know, it's the right number of, you know, numbers, but why is it not matching? So one of the things that we've actually done within our system is we've built in checksums and functions, and that means that if you're adding a 16-digit number, we actually run that through something called the LUNGS checksum algorithm, and our system is smart enough to determine that any random 16-digit number may not be a credit card. Right? So that is why I think oftentimes we get the confusion, the customers asking, you know, why is it not matching? Well, it's not matching because we are actually being smart and trying to reduce your organization's false positives. You don't want any 16-digit number to just randomly trigger policies, right? In addition to that, we also look for collaborative evidence. What that means is not only are we running the checksum, we're also looking for words in the vicinity of your 16-digit number. Let's say you have a credit card. We'll look for words like Visa or MasterCard, and that also helps reduce the false positives within your system. Those are just some of the things we do. Here we have a huge list of additional things. You know, we do large keyword dictionaries. You know, we look for specific keyword matches. We have confidence to say, you know, if we match 2 things or 3 things, we can reduce or increase the confidence. We also have the ability to look at the count. A lot of organizations say, if it's 1 or 2 credit cards, it may not be as, sensitive or may not have a high priority. However, if I'm leaking an Excel sheet with hundreds of credit cards, then I do want to make sure that I block everything. So we've also taken that into account within our system, and we're able to, fine-tune and help you guys figure out exactly, specifically, how granular you want to do your controls. So something I talked about already, this is a preview and just kind of a quick view of the sensitive information type authoring UX. So show of hands, how many of you guys are really excited about this? How many have you asked for? Okay, about like 50% of the audience. Awesome. I can tell you now it's coming. Don't have exact timelines, but we've heard the feedback and it's coming. One of the things I do want to call out is, we've seen a huge amount of adoption from the time we've deployed and rolled out custom sense information types, even through the XML. We're excited to be bringing you guys the sensitive type authoring UX. We're expecting you guys to love it and be able to use it, and we're hoping to see more usage of the custom sensitive types. All right, so talking about protect. How do we protect within our system? So I covered how we detect, how we classify. The next piece is how we protect. So, how do we stop a violation before it happens? We have internal scanning within our system that looks at the content, either through transit for email or at rest inside of SharePoint. Depending on your customer's configuration and how the admin sets up their policies, we have a wide range of actions that can be enabled. We also, make sure to balance productivity and security. And here are some of the new pieces that we're newly adding. So I talked a little bit about automatic DLP policies for new tenants. What that means is by default, we're going to be enabling some common sensitive type information detection within your system, so you're protected out of the box. The next one is, I demoed that, is policy tips in SharePoint and OneDrive during sharing. The next one we've heard a lot of asked around is email scoping and controls. What that means today is inside of our Security and Compliance Center, we already enable you to scope your policies to a given SharePoint site collection. We've heard a lot of asks around, when does this scoping also come into Exchange? When can we start scoping our policies in Exchange for users and groups? Well, I'm happy to announce that piece is new and it's also coming very shortly. What this means and what we've seen the use of this is a lot of European countries have requirements around scoping certain policies to end users. And so this new feature will allow you to do that. The next piece, of course, is our streamlined management experience, which I'll do in the second demo. So just to talk a little bit about how this works is your admin will go in and configure a DLP policy. That gets stored in something we call the Unified Policy Store. And what that enables is it's one copy of the policy that then gets synced to all these different workloads. And we're continuing to evolve the different out-of-box policies we have, and we're also continuing to evolve the different workloads that we have. We'll love your feedback on what additional workloads you guys are looking for. That would be great. The last piece here, I think the animation is not showing up, is once these policy distributions across different workloads, the enforcement actions happen within that particular given workload. So as I demoed in the end user experience, your end users are protected inside of the different clients in Exchange. Same with SharePoint and OneDrive and Outlook, right? And all of those policies and enforcement actions that happen on the client side, well, you may ask, are they audited? How do I know what my end user is doing? There's also the monitoring piece within our system. So every time an end user, decides to report something as a false positive or report something as an override, that all gets fed into something we call our activity feed and DLP monitoring and reports. And that's going to be the third demo I'm going to be showing. And I'll talk at the end of the session a little bit about how extensible our APIs are, because we get a lot of questions around that. So moving on, I'm going to be demoing the DLP policy authoring. So how many of you guys are familiar with the Security Compliance Center? Okay, looks like everyone. So I won't talk to you guys about how new it is, how it's a one-stop shop for everything, but I will say it is a one-stop shop for all our compliance and security needs. So here you see we have data loss prevention. There's also data governance and threat management and mail flow too. So if you guys are interested in those, please also check out some of those sessions later on in the recordings. But what I'll talk about here today is I'm in the Security and Compliance Center as my admin. I go into this policy tab, and what I see here is one place to configure all my DLP policies across my multiple workloads. Previously, back in the day, you had to configure them in 2 separate places. You had to migrate and transfer rules. Now what we're enabling the customer and lowering the cost of maintaining your organization's security and compliance is this all be done in one singular place. In addition to that, we can see that there's data. Sometimes, you just want to take a look at your policies and see how things are trending. You don't want a detailed report. So here in our policy configuration, we also show you a snippet of what's going on with your DLP policy rule matches, and we also show you the false positives and overrides. And you may ask, what is this little exclamation mark at the top? Well, hold your questions for that, because in the third demo, that ties into the smart reports that I'm going to be showing you guys. So let's walk through a little bit about how to create a policy. And one of the key points I talked about earlier is we're really trying to streamline the admin experience to make things a lot easier. So I'll go ahead and create a policy. And you see here, it's pretty easy. I have a wide range of different policy types I can configure. So I have areas of finance, medical, privacy, and also I can configure a custom one if I so choose to. So this ties into how we're making the system a lot easier for first use, but we're also enabling it to be more configurable and richer for the more complex customers. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be creating a HIPAA template, and I'm going to show you how exactly we've enhanced our HIPAA policies from your feedback. So of course I can press a name and add a description here. One of the things I did want to speak to is there's a lot of questions around, I think the gentleman had earlier, right? What are the different workloads that we have inside of our system? Well, the default is we're going to want to protect you across all locations. However, let's take a look at the different workloads. So we have Exchange, SharePoint, and OneDrive. And if you see here, we have the ability to scope which site collections you can protect your organization. What we've seen a lot of customers do is, as they're rolling out our product, they'll finally scope their policies to a given test site collection. And that is kind of some of the best practices we tell our customers. Test out your policies in test mode within a given site collection. Once it's valid and you've taken a look at the reports, then start rolling out to the larger site collections. One of the things I did touch upon earlier is being able to scope Exchange. So that will be coming shortly. Instead of all, you'll have links that says choose users and groups, and you're going to be able to scope your policies in Exchange to given users and groups to make it more granular. So I'm going to go back. The next piece here is you can take a look. If you're familiar with our system, the page here allows you to select which sensitive types you want to detect, right? So usually you'll look for a lot common types like sensitive information, credit cards, and social security numbers. However, if you notice here, there's something new called PII identifiers and medical terms. What is that? Let's take a quick look. So if you see here, what we've actually done, and this is new functionality we've added to the system, is through large dictionaries and grouping, this is how we're able to extend our HIPAA policy templates, right? So what this means here is we've created a group called PII identifiers, and we're saying that within this group, if any of these pieces match, so social security numbers and DEA numbers, in addition to that, we can and or these two different groups, right? So the scenario here is, if I find social security numbers or, DEA numbers, because it's looking for any of these sensitive types, right? And I find something in the medical terms group, so international classification of diseases, I'm able to kind of figure out the anding and oring and have more complex logic around grouping. I know that's something that we've heard a lot of you guys ask for, and I'm happy to say now we support it. So I'm going to also show you, the different sensitive types we have. So if you take a look here and give it time to load, my connection's a little slow, we support 80 out-of-the-box sensitive information types. What that means is, sorry, let's try this again. All right, we'll give it some time to load. If not, I have a screenshot of this later. There it goes. We have 80 out-of-the-box sensitive information types, and you may ask, what happens when you create a custom sensitive information type? How do I add it to my policy? How do I use it? Well, that's very easy. So what we have here is, out of the 80, we've also created some sensitive custom ones. So here, Contoso has added an employee ID number, and we call that a custom type because it's not out of the box. Each organization is going to have their own different employee ID number, and so this is configured specifically for Contoso. And again, if you guys want to see a deep dive of that, check out Wes's session on Wednesday, the recording of it. So I'm going to cancel out of this. One other thing is, you guys are probably very familiar with this. We're able to control whether or not the content is detected with people inside or outside my organization. So in the first demo I did of the end user, I specifically am looking for sensitive content shared with people outside my organization, but it's also configurable depending on your organization's requirements. The next thing I want to show here is how to configure policy tips, right? You saw the end user experience in the first demo. This is one simple way of configuring your policy tips and also end user notification emails. And like I said before, you're able to very easily customize your policy tips. So you can type in whatever messaging you want here, of course with a certain given cap, but this is how you would go about and do it. And of course, you can also decide whether or not to notify certain people of this. And again, you also have the ability to send instant reports to your admins when a policy tip or a DLP policy has matched. And finally, one of the new pieces we added is we can restrict access to the content and override the policy for folks inside or outside of your organization real time. And this is the experience I showed inside of SharePoint, where in real time, you're able to show the policy tip and block sharing. You can also configure the policy tip configurations here. So what I've configured here is I'm only going to block people outside my organization, and people inside my organization will have access. So in the first demo, if I were to share my given document with, say, an admin or someone internally, I would not see that policy tip, and I would be able to be productive without even knowing that I'm internally protected. And that's the seamless end user experience that we have. In addition to that, I can also, as the admin, configure whether or not I want to set the policy to override for, do I want to let my end user go ahead and configure and override the policy? I can require a business justification and also, say whether or not if a false positive, maybe the sensitive information wasn't actually a match for whatever reason, I can also override the policy in that way. So I'm going to cancel all of this and say next. And the final thing I did want to talk to is we've seen a lot of customers, trying to enforce their policies and trying to test their policies. And some of our best practices is as a customer is rolling out, we really like them to test out their policies first before they start impacting their end users. So that is that given setting. And we also have the setting that says maybe you want to notify your end users as you're testing, so you can also do that. When your policies are in test mode, although your actions like block access or whatever else aren't actually being enforced, all that data is being collected in a reporting feed. So admins will still get the report of what is within their system and how their customers are interacting with the system, but none of the enforcement actions will take place. And so that is how you can effectively test your system without impacting and blocking folks from their work until you've determined that the policies in place are what you expect them to be. So next, and I'll cancel out of this. Any questions before I move on?
So in the Compliance Center, when you're creating the policy, I see we have the ability to block external sharing or allow or block sharing inside our organization.
Mm-hmm.
We have the requirement to allow sensitive sharing between someone in the same business unit or department,
Mm-hmm.
but block that if they're not in the same business unit or department.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, there's really no way to do that. Is that
Great
something
question.
that could be added?
So that how it would done is actually through the user scoping that I just talked about. You can configure policies that apply to given users within given groups. So if user group A is talking to group B, then you would be able to configure that way and scope it.
Okay. I couldn't find any area where you specify groups, but maybe I just overlooked it.
That's new functionality that we're adding. So what I talked about is the scoping piece is something that we're adding that's new.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So it'll be coming, but it's not there. Yes.
So last Ignite, they were showing one feature that I'm not sure if it was enabled worldwide, but when you click on the DLP, you would be able to upload files, and then it will check them and see if there is any match, and it will give you the information about what was the match. Is that coming, or?
I'm not sure, so let's take it offline.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there any way that DLP can scan like images for credit card information?
Great question. So the question was, can our DLP system today scan images? Not today, but we're actively working on enabling OCR or image detection within our system. Our product group is actually currently investigating in that. We don't have commitments or timelines, but we are, that's something we commonly hear because, it is a big way for folks and end users to leak their information. All right. One more question before I move on. Yes.
If the tenant has mixed licensing, so I've got some that are on E1 and some that are E3, would I need to wait for the scoping to be able to apply these, or how does that work currently?
Do you want to take that one, Adam? AJ.
So from a licensing perspective, the way the DLP works is you officially have to be licensed for E3 or a Exchange Online P2 or SharePoint P2 license or OneDrive P2 license. If you have mixed licensing, you'll need to scope it down to the correct user so that you're properly following the licensing that you actually have.
Yeah. And if you have additional questions, feel free to email our marketing guy, who is not AJ, but Adam. So he will gladly field these questions. All right. Moving forward. So just want to touch upon some of the key points I talked about here as a recap. We have sophisticated built-in protection across Office 365. And as I showed here, it was pretty easy to turn on. I think it was about maybe like 5-6 clicks if I walk through the regular workflow without customizing anything. It really shows that I have one place to configure all my policies and all my requirements around security and compliance, right? There's also one centralized location to now configure your DLP policies. And your policies, once configured, can apply across the different Office 365 and different client endpoints. You're able to define the sensitive types you want to use, including custom, and you have a consistent policy experience across all the different workloads, as I just kind of showed. The other thing to talk about here is we have built-in policies and templates. So I talked a little bit about the different templates we have, which are 40 plus in the different geolocations. In addition to that, the screenshot I have on here is the ability that we have to scan your system and tell you what additional information you may not be protecting. So you can configure some smart policies, and we'll recommend them to you guys in the system. And this is just kind of a quick walkthrough of, how to configure your DLP policies and the different templates that we have. And of course, the last piece here is I did not walk through the custom DLP policy template creation, but it's also very easy. You would follow the same flow, but instead of having your name and your sensitive information types populated, you would purely select them. And that allows the admins the flexibility of configuring whatever they need for their security and compliance requirements. One more thing to quickly talk about, I won't be able to demo, is we also have user-driven recommendations. And what that means is, like I said a little bit earlier, we're able to scan your system and tell you what other sensitive types you may be leaking in your organization without it being protected. And through this UX, it'll be a widget inside of your security and compliance center. You can easily, in one click or 2 clicks, be able to enable new DLP policies of content you already know that is unprotected within your system. And just to kind of quickly walk through, we really have a quick and easy way to configure your DLP policies. I walked through that very, very fast, but these are screenshots for you guys to take a look at later. It is very streamlined. We've had a lot of feedback in the past about how complex our configuration is. So now what we've done is a step-by-step workflow for you guys to very easy and very streamlined go through the 5 or 6 steps of configuring DLP policies. And the last thing I want to just recap on is the rich customization. So I showed you the new grouping functionality, and I showed you, the fact that once you upload a custom sensitive information type, you can very easily add that into your DLP policies. In addition to that, I talked a little about the different actions we have. So I showed policy tips and block access. There's also the ability to generate incident reports. I know encryption is one I've heard a lot about. We can talk offline about that. But if you have gone to our Office 365 message encryption sessions, there's a little bit more information about that, that new feature that we've announced in those sessions. And of course, the last piece to show is in the UX, I also showed the configuration and customization of policy tips and being able to finally tune what exactly you want your end user to do. And of course, the last piece is incident reports. I didn't really show that through, but what that does is inside of the incident report, we will have a list of all the different policies your end users or your system has detected, and we also give you a variety of different information. All that information that shows up in our incident report is also going to be in our activity feed API, and our activity feed API is extensible to a lot of different parties, and I'll talk about that later on. So the last demo I want to really quickly go through is monitor and remediation. So how many of you guys think that our reports in DLP can be better? Okay, maybe like 10% of the room. Well, I'm really happy that you guys think that because we're working really hard to make them better from a lot of your feedback. We want to show you not only when a policy is violated, because that's easy. Showing you when something is detected is easy, right? How do we show you the insights? How do we make it more actionable for you guys? We've heard a lot of feedback around the fact that admins don't want to go into the SCC every single day and take a look at their data, They want to be able to schedule a report. They want to be able to get a digest, So let's take a look at what that looks like. So I'm going to switch to my email as an admin. And what I see here is something new. It's called the Weekly Compliance Digest for your organization. And I'm going to spend some time walking through this because this is all brand new, and I just want you guys to take a look, soak it in. So what we have here is we're now sending out Office 365 Security Compliance Digest. And of course it tells you, it's helping you stay informed in your organization. It shows you the data loss prevention matches and the graph, right? And also sends you the sent and received email. In the future, you can imagine we will add additional reports and additional information. We can potentially also make it configurable in the future. We'd love your feedback on that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm an admin, I'm looking through this, and I think, well, this is an interesting report. I wonder what's going on in these days. Why is there a spike and then going down? What does that actually mean, right? In the past, I would have to go into SCC, go to the reports tab, figure out what's going on. Now we have a very simple digest mail for this. I'm going to click on this and say, go to the report and see where that takes me. So where that takes me is I'm natively going into now SCC. Instead of having to navigate to reports, I'm instantly taken to the DLP policy matches report. So that's one click, very streamlined, easy to get to. And what you see here is if you're played around with our reports, it looked a bit different. This is something we're calling our smart reports. And these little explanations here mean that there's some insights that can be had when you take a look at this reporting data. You know, one thing I do want to speak to is now we can also create a schedule report, explore it, and also request a report, which is a lot of the feedback we've heard from customers around being able to schedule reports and send reports. So I'm happy to announce that now we have this new functionality. Now let's take a look at what these things mean in these incidents, right? If I click on a given incident, I am able to see the top insights and recommendations that have happened in that span of my report. So in that given range, and range is about 4 or 5 days in this section. So in here I can see that, you know, I have 4 medium priority incidents that happen, or sorry, insights that happen, and they're all active and they give me the date that they're created. You know, I can also click into these and figure out what's going on, but this is all new functionality. In addition to that, not only do I have a summary of the insights, I also have top insights and recommendations on the bottom. So if I click on this, it tells me the repeat users that have contributed to incidents. So these are the users you do want to watch out for in case, you know, they're seeing multiple violations and whatnot. And what we see here is under actions, it's one-click easy actions to take some remediation action based off this insight. So here, if I see that D. Gailey is, you know, doing something bad, I can go and notify the end user with one easy click here, or I can potentially think, you know, let's reset their password to make sure that this person isn't doing something malicious. And you can imagine in the future we're going to be expanding these actions to add additional remediation pieces. Now let's take a look at the top sensitive types in your organization. So here we see that credit card numbers is the top sensitive information type that we're seeing the last couple of weeks, right? I can go in and easily edit my policy now. Previously in our flows, right, we had to take a look at the reporting data and then go to the policy to fine-tune things. Now we have one quick, easy link to go and edit your policies to fine-tune them. In addition to that, you know, we have the ability to see insights in the Activity Explorer. So how many of you guys are familiar with the Explorer or have gone to a session about that this week? Okay, so it's all brand new to you guys. That's awesome. I'm excited to be demoing that for you. So I'm going to click and see insights in the Activity Explorer. What this means is I'm curious around what else is going on in my system related to the DLP policies and credit card numbers. I'm taken here to the Explorer, and what I'm going to do is go to the risky activity content. And what I see here is all the data around DLP and risky activity that's happened in the past couple of days. Sorry, the past couple of weeks and time frames. So I can, you know, go in here and take a look at filtering on sender. Maybe I don't want to look at risky activity based off of sender. I can also filter off of file name, workload, sites, and also data protection classifications and policies. Now, what this enables me to do is it's one simple flow to go forward with the investigation of my policies. In addition to that, not only am I looking at sharing, I can look at other activity like classification and workload. So what I'm looking at here in this thing is a breakdown of all the sharing that's happened that's risky, and I'm breaking it down by sender. And these bars mean I'm looking at external anonymously shared, which means sharing through an anonymous link, or externally authenticated shared, so sharing with an authenticated user, or I can look at internal sharing. So if my first demo, my end user had actively gone in and shared and overrode, right, with the Gmail account, I would now get an updated data set in this to say like, hey, you know, this has happened and this is risky activity because it matches a DLP policy and that it's being shared externally. So let's take a look at some of these pieces. If I click on customer data, I'll see that in the details, now in line without having to go and chase down what matched and what's going on, I have the ability to see the information around the match, and I can also see the details. You know, what was detected in this document, and I can easily explore that. So here I see that it's credit card numbers, passport numbers, and social security numbers that were detected. I can also very easily see the policy match, and I can go in, you know, and edit the policy that resulted in this given match. If you look at the top, once I've investigated this, I can also unshare the document if I deem that the external user, or whoever it's being shared with, shouldn't have access, right? I can also, you know, label the document as highly confidential to enable more protections if need be. You can imagine in the future we'll extend these remediation actions to additional ones to make this workflow, then this Explorer flow, more rich for your customers. So what I'm going to do here is, if you notice, in my first demo, what I shared was the Northwind customer data, right? I see here that, you know, there's actually been someone else who's shared this. I'm going to click on it and say, you know, take a look. I don't think this actually should be shared. So now I can unshare that document. And what's going to happen is whoever had previous permission to this document, now this document is going to be unshared from them. And the system will be very streamlined, protected from that. Any questions before I go on?
I have a question how you take actions on the following scenarios, that you have an admin who misuse that to find out any strictly confidential information inside your SharePoint organization. Let's say you have a project Scorpio, and of course he has access to all the SharePoint issues, but he doesn't know what to look for. With a policy, he could create a policy, look for Scorpio, and then he knows where he needs to give access to himself. How do I ensure that this is not going to happen?
So basically, you want to ensure the admin from doing something bad.
Yeah.
So we have something called auditing, and I would check out one of the audit sessions because they go into that a little bit deeper. But basically, from an admin perspective, everything that both the admin and end users do get audited. So if the admin is doing something bad, we can take a look at the audit logs to figure out what exactly is going on.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You've talked about DLP when things are in transit, but if you start implementing DLP, is there a way to go and scan everything to flush out anything that would be a violation?
So you're saying if you can do a scan after the fact, or is that the question?
Well, if I have a lot of data in my system, but I haven't had DLP enabled, and now I do enable it, can I basically run those rules against data that's already in mail files and OneDrive and so forth?
So for SharePoint and OneDrive, regardless of when the document was uploaded, once the policy is enforced, we will scan all the documents within your system. You can decide whether or not you want the notifications to go out for documents that have already been within the system, but it does scan everything.
Including email?
So in the email case, that's a little bit different. In email within our DLP system, currently it's only in transit. But that's good feedback. We should talk offline around the use case there.
Okay.
The PowerShell module for the Security and Compliance Center, does it support, does it have commandlets to automate this? So for example, if I say, any document that has credit card and is being shared, I want to unshare this. So of course I cannot do this for maybe 1,000 documents. If there's a PowerShell supports that, the module?
So for the question was, you know, can we use PowerShell to script unsharing? That's a good question. So today we can use PowerShell to create policies. I'll have to follow up. I believe we should also be able to use PowerShell to unshare because clicking on that button basically results in a PowerShell action in the back end. I don't have the PowerShell to share with you right now, but we can take it offline. All right. I think no more questions. I'm going to continue. Okay. So just to recap a little bit, I showed you the smart reports that we're really excited to ship to you guys. And basically that involves being able to show you new insights and making the reports a lot better so you can go through the flow of detecting what's sensitive without having to dig in and see what's going on. You know, we're able to send you a summary digest of what's going on within the system and very easily link you through that reporting flow and that investigation flow. We also have actions to suggest for what to do when you want to remediate those actions for your end users. And you know, I shared with you guys the way that admins can explore and see what's going on within their system. So the other piece here is I did want to talk through, and maybe not demo, the fact that we talked a little bit about the remediation. You take the remediation steps. We answered the gentleman's question around, you know, whether or not that can be scripted and whatever else. We can take that feedback offline. But the thing to talk about here is, you know, we're continuing to evolve these reports. We're hearing the feedback around making these richer, and that is something that we're actively investing in. And of course, DLP alerts and notifications. So I'm not going to demo this, but you know, you guys are probably very familiar with the fact that inside of a DLP policy, you can generate alerts and notifications, and it'll give you this information that you see here. And one of the things is all the information you see here is also fed into our Activity Feed API. And then the last thing to talk about in the reporting space is we took a look at the insights and the remediation and the Explorer views. In addition to that, we were also actively shipping new reports. So this is an example of a new report that basically enables the incident level review. What that means is you can now very easily go into a report and see what is all the information tied to a given policy match. Previously in the past, you had to, you know, take a look, drill down, see what's going on. We've now built that UX natively into the reporting. So when you take a look and click on these, you get a screen that swipes out that shows you all the different pieces around the reports. Now let's talk about extensibility. So I talked a lot about the Office 365 Activity API. We've gotten a lot of questions around, it's great that we have DLP reports. How do we get the data? How do we get that to tie together with our other DLP and security products, right? So that's done through the Activity Feed API, and it's exposed programmatically, and all the DLP events are there. So here you can see the events that we have in SharePoint, Exchange, and also the other workloads are all fed into something we call the Unified Auditing Pipeline. That is then stored in the long-term auditing storage, and then that data goes to our compliance center to go create those smart reports, and also through PowerShell scripts. For ISVs and other partners who want to be able to use that information, we have something called the Management Activity API. And we've worked with BMC and also Microsoft Cloud App Securities for them to get that data and tie that to other parties. And this really helps how do you protect beyond Office 365, right? A lot of your customers are using multiple products and multiple ways to protect their data of security and compliance. Well, how do we all stitch that data together, right? Through the Management Activity Feed API, you're now able to grab the data from Office 365 and also consolidate that with whatever applications or other SaaS applications that your customer is using. And just some documentation around how to expose the DLP events programmatically. I think if you guys are interested in that, there's really two main pieces of paths that we have. There's one path around DLP events that are non-sensitive, and there's another path of sensitive. And so when you guys enable these and you play around with them, just be aware that if you want the sensitive data, you will need to get both paths for the DLP pieces. Because there are security requirements around, you are working with confidential data. We do realize this. We want to make sure that not only is your system protected, but the information you're getting out of your system is also equally protected, right? So in summary, I just wanted to quickly talk about, we looked at how we detect, we looked at how we classify. I showed you the configuration of how to protect. And of course, I lastly showed you how exactly monitoring works. What is the user experience for your admins when they take a look at reports, right? So one thing I did want to talk through is we hear a lot of questions around what's coming, what's next, what's new, what can I get excited about, right? So this is what this slide is. As you see here, we have a ton of new investments, but the couple of pieces I do want to call out is we are bringing to you guys custom classifications, which you've heard a lot of asks for. We're really excited about that. We're also really excited about the ability to allow you guys to use a UX for that. That'll be coming shortly. We're excited about the HIPAA templates and our updates to it. We've seen a huge uptick in usage of our HIPAA templates, although we've just recently shipped them. So that's awesome. And of course, coming soon is our email scoping that I talked to. Inside of the Exchange workload, being able to scope by users and also groups. The different content detection that we're also investing in. We have 80 out-of-the-box sensitive types today. We're also continuing to invest in more and more of those. As you hear from the customers, and if you have additional feedback around what additional sensitive types your customers are looking for, please, let us know. We also have additional fine-tuning that we're building within our system. And of course, we're also very excited for the integration of Office 365 message encryption with DLP policies, and that'll be coming shortly. Just to recap a little bit about best practices, because I know you guys are all excited to go home and try this out, right? So what are the caveats to look for when you're setting up some policies? So very easy to get started today with our templates. I showed you that in about 5-6 steps. Very easy to turn on the HIPAA policy, very easy to turn on some PII, PCI DSS policies, right? Make sure when you're first configuring and potentially rolling out your policies within your organization to use the test mode, right? You don't want to impact and start blocking all your content and messing up the system, right? What you really want to do is make sure and test it. And this mode enables you to do that and also collect the reporting information to see how your RDLP system is helping you protect your organization, right? Turn on the email incident reports, right? The test mode is great, but you want to see what exactly is matching. What is the sensitive content? What are the policies that are matching, right? So make sure you turn on your incident reports to actually get that information to start off with. And the last one I talked a little about in the beginning is make sure you take a look at what our classifications are particularly detecting. Like I said, if you just put in some random 16-digit number, it may not pass the lungs checksum algorithms and other algorithms we have within the system. So you want to take a look at using valid sample data when testing. And this is really to help reduce your false positives. And with that, here are some information protection related sessions. I have about a couple minutes to take questions if you guys want to head up to the mics. Thank you.
So can we expect a template for GDPR compliance?
So your question is GDPR. What are we doing with GDPR? That's a great question. We actually have a deep dive session that happened yesterday that specifically goes into all the GDPR requirements. It was led by Deepak. I would check that one out.
Yeah.
I don't know if you went to that one. It was very big deep dive of it.
I did, but should we use custom policies right now or are you coming with a template, a default template?
Sorry, say that again?
Will there be a default template for GDPR compliance?
Well, there'll be a default template for GDPR. Right now, I don't have really anything to communicate, but I definitely can see us, enabling a default GDPR template to make it a lot easier for customers to enable. That's something we can definitely look at, and I would love your feedback on that. Thank you.
Doesn't work.
Last of the day.
How does this relate to Azure Information Protection?
Great question. So me and Gagan actually did a session on that. Oh, the question was, how does this DLP relate to Azure Information Protection? So we actually did a session around that. We are actively working across Microsoft to bring to something to basically unify the different Microsoft information protection solutions. So what that means is with the concept of, yes, that's exactly what everyone is excited about. With the concept of labels, now labels can apply not only the AIP protection actions, we can also apply the DLP actions, we can also apply retention and additional actions. So with labels, everything will get unified. So with one set of labels that the end user puts on, let's say highly confidential, right? You can, as an admin, determine what types of protection policies, or sorry, protection actions to enforce based off of that.
And what will be the time frame for that?
The time frame, so we're going to preview end of year. This time frame, yeah. That's right. Awesome, thanks. I think, yes.
Do you have any mechanisms for scanning the internals of a password-protected zip file?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Do you have any mechanisms for scanning the internals of a password-protected zip file?
Do we have mechanism to scan password-protected files? Today, we don't crack open password-protected files. However, inside of our Exchange rules, we have the ability to say if a attachment cannot be scanned, you can do another action based off of that. So the condition would be, in order for detect that, like if content cannot be scanned, then you can do additional protection actions and resulting actions. So that would be the way that we've kind of our story around protected zip files.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Can you repeat the delivery time frame for the HIPAA templates?
The HIPAA templates? Oh, the HIPAA templates are already shipped.
Oh, they're already.
It's already there. Yes.
So they're all shipped already? Mm-hmm. Okay.
So if you go in, they should already be there. Yep.
All right.
That along with large dictionaries. Yeah. Yep.
What about the, based on the other gentleman's question, what about zip files? Can the internal pieces of that be searched and scanned? And then I have a question on the educational aspect for K-12 education. Are you guys doing anything with FERPA? Are you doing anything for the education side of things?
So we should talk more about the education side. I want to get more educated on, what you guys are looking for. So we're actively always investing in our sensitive types. I don't think right now we are looking at the education pieces, but it would be really awesome to get feedback around what specifically the new types you're looking for that. And to your first question about zip files, so today I don't believe we extract the content from zip files, but as I replied to the other gentleman, if the zip file is password protected, we are able to detect for content we can't scan. So inside of, actually, zip files, let me get back to you on that one, because I know for certain nested folders and nested files, we are able to scan to a certain given level. I need to check on the zip files. But I do know that for password protected documents, we are not able to crack that content container.
Thank you.
You said that the new tenants DLP will be activated by default. Will it be activated in preview mode so that no action is blocked? And if I have an old tenant, how can I get the same configuration that a new tenant will get?
That's a great question. So with the default policies, we make sure that we're not blocking or impacting your system in any way negatively. So what we actually do is we're just simply notifying. and we're looking for very common things like credit card numbers and social security numbers. And so when you go into your tenancy, you'll be able to see how many policy matches, and you can turn those off if you deem that you don't want those, or change them as necessary. The other question you had was, how do I get a already configured tenant, the all by default experience? So if you have an existing tenant that doesn't have any DLP policies, you would get the default policies. However, if your tenant already has DLP policies, you wouldn't be able to get the default policies, but that's where the recommendations will come in, and we will actually scan your system and let you know what additional sensitive content your system has that may not be protected, and that way you can, also kind of get in and use the insights we have in our system by using the recommendations.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. We're back. More.
So I'm playing around with this for about a year now. And we started with the exchange DLP policies, and they were pretty granular. And they were also like you could define exceptions, like I could still allow certain data types to travel. Then we went to the Security and Compliance Center, and there was the, /DLP was the initial dashboard. A lot of this was still possible there. Now we are in the /data loss prevention, and it seems that the interface is getting dumper and dumper, actually. It removes me a lot of the functionality that I had in the exchange policies are not there anymore. So is there some timeline when we can expect the same functionality?
We've heard a lot of that same feedback, so we are actively trying to bring a lot of the more flexibility and granularity that we have inside of Exchange rules to the Security Compliance Center. I would be really interested in talking offline with you around what specific conditions inside of Exchange that you really need to see inside of the Security Admin Center to be able to help migrate your rules over.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, and I can tell you, sure, no problem. And then the second one, is there a limit to the rules I can have in one DLP rule?
So is there a limit to rules? That's a great question. I believe inside of the Exchange limit is about 100 rules. For STC, I have to double check on the limit, but I think it's also 100. But yeah.
And but data types or different data types within one rule? Because I tried to create one rule and just basically say, I want to scan for all the sensitive information types. When I try to press save, then it fails.
Yeah, so that's a great question also. So the way that it works is within our rules today, we have a limit based off of size. And so I don't recall from the top of my head exactly the size limit, but there is a size limit to how much we can put within the rule. We can talk offline because we do potentially give exceptions to if you need to create more rules or if you need to increase the size limit, but those are always at a one-off basis because what we find is the majority of our customers can do what they need to within those limits. And the idea isn't for your customers to create hundreds of rules, right? We try to make it simple and combine the rules so it's easier to maintain. But there are very advanced customers who do potentially have hundreds of rules, and we really help them with that too.
Okay. All right, thanks.
The question is from the auditing perspective. Will we see any DLP-related events in the auditing log? So, I mean, if someone tries to share data outside the organization or is, trying persistently violate DLP policy, shall we see any events in unified event log or, any other event storage?
As I talked about a little bit earlier, whenever a DLP policy triggers, that event goes directly into our activity feed, which is the audit activity feed. We all use one feed.
Okay.
You would just have to subscribe to the DLP event.
It's already here, yeah?
That's right.
Thank you.
That's how BMC and also Microsoft Cloud App Security is able to grab the data that we had within SharePoint. They use that same activity feed.
Thank you.
What I also do is you could also use that. So in like the Microsoft Cloud App Security or in Office 365 Cloud App Security, when you see a certain number of DLP events, you can also trigger an activity policy that says you shut down someone's account. So if they, you say, if I see 5 DLP policy events, then just basically, shut down their account, like lock them out of their account. So if you really want to shut someone down because they're violating too many times, you could do it. You can also do it in a certain amount of time.